Well, today is our burning bowl ceremony, and that's going to be at the end of our service. As you exit, there'll be an opportunity for you to go to a bowl that is outside and burn up and put away things of the past that might be blocking you from living your life fully. So as we approach a new year, we're going to talk about YOUtopia. Now, it's spelled Y-O-U-topia. And this YOUtopia is something that is not outside of you. It is inside of you. It is that place where you feel great. You're excited about life. You're full of love and life energy. You're enjoying it. You're full of peace, and you're full of joy. Now, I know that if you're like me, I would like to stay in that space all the time. And if 2004 has not been that kind of a year for me, a YOUtopia year, then obviously I would like to create that YOUtopia in 2005. I would like to have that peace. You know, the Course in Miracles says that the only reason that we're here is to learn to choose peace. In spite of whatever is going on in our life, to choose peace, to move away from fear. Every time we make a choice for love and for peace over against fear, then a miracle occurs. And that's the real miracle of life. And that's the choice that we can make when we learn to live in the conscious presence of God all the time. That's YOUtopia. That's what it's all about. And most of us have lived long enough and experienced enough in life to come to understand that the outer appearances of things do not have to disturb us. We've lived enough and learned enough that we also know that the outer manifestation of material goods also do not fulfill us. They can make life pleasurable for us for a period of time, but we never can really buy and own enough stuff to be in YOUtopia. The new car ceases to smell like a new car very shortly, and then it wears down a little bit, and then we see another cute and wonderful thing that we would like to have, whether it's the latest electronic gadget or another car, or maybe sometimes another relationship or another job. Keep hoping, keep thinking that somehow or the other, something on the outer is going to bring me this YOUtopia of peace and joy. Well, our problem is that we allow the outer experiences of things to stumble us and keep us from experiencing the peace and the joy. We take our eyes off of the goal, off of the end result that we really want, which is peace and joy, and we begin to focus our attention on other things that appear to be important at the time. But as we look back at those things 5 years or 10 years, we begin to see them in their true perspective. Stephen Covey, in his best-selling book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says that we should begin with the end in mind and keep our eyes focused on that. Do you get it? Begin our day, begin our life, begin our year 2005 with the end in mind, the peace, and declare the intention to be peaceful, to declare the intention to be joyful, to declare the intention to be loving and forgiving at all times. But you know what happens to us is that we forget how amazing we are. And we forget that we have that choice and that we can continue every day to grow in spirit, to grow in our spiritual unfoldment, because it's only as our spiritual side, our divine nature expands, that we can have this connection with God and live in that YOUtopia. And it's a choice that comes to us every single day. Now, most Sundays when you come, you hear somebody on the platform tell you that you are wonderful. And we haven't done that yet this morning, but I want you to know that you are wonderful. And this is true. Now, this is an amazing thing for us to grasp, because most of us really don't grasp it, that we are wonderfully and marvelously made, just extraordinarily made. And people who have chosen a job that would give them an opportunity to study the human body or the human condition get to have a grasp at how phenomenal you are. The number of atoms in your body, the number of cells that work and how they work and how incredible you really are. And for us to live less than that, less than the best, is to fall short of the glory that God has placed within us. So we are designed, okay, I want us to understand, we are designed to live in utopia all the time. Our very essence is love. Love isn't something that we fall into. It isn't something we have to go get. It's not something we're in competition for. It is our true nature. But because we allow the stumbling blocks in life to stop us, and we focus our attention not on that end goal, but on the smaller things that are happening, we get distracted. And then we get unhappy because we're focusing on the lack and limitation rather than on the end result. Today, I would like for us to have a unique experience at church. I'm not interested in you being able to go home and tell people what I said. I want you to, first of all, just accept how powerful you are and to make a conscious choice in the upcoming year to live utopia. And then this morning becomes a life-changing experience for you, and your life would never be the same again. I was out talking to people, but I think one of the hymns that we sang today is one of my favorites, hymn number 222, which says, "My life begins anew today." I love that thought, and that thought is true for every single day. But how about this morning, let's agree that we can totally restart our year and our life over, brand new, from the very beginning, in just an amazing, amazing way. I wanted to share with you a true story. This is a story that we can somewhat identify with now because of the big storms that have hit the Midwest. And this was a time when a man in a city, a small town in the Sierra Nevadas, the storm started coming across the United States. For 3 days, a fierce winter storm had traveled 1,500 miles across the North Pacific, coming from Alaska. Gale force winds, torrential rains. The Sierra Nevadas to the east, where snow was piling up, which was going to be great for the skiers afterwards, but right now it was miserable. Just like people that we've seen have gotten stuck in airports because they can't fly, or stuck on the side of the road with deep snow or ice and having a difficult time. It was such one of those times, and Father O'Malley was wise enough to stay in the rectory of the church, and there he was one night working on his sermon, and he receives a phone call, and it's a lady's voice who said that she was calling from the hospital in Auburn, and she says, "We have a patient who is terminally ill, and he's not going to last very much longer. He has requested that a priest come and give him the last rites. Can you come?" And he says, "Well, I don't know." He said, "We're experiencing floods here. So the bridges might be out. I know that limbs are across the roads, but, I want to do that. I'll do my best to be there." Now, this hospital was only 30 miles away, but he says, surely within 2 hours I can make it. I'll do my best to get there. So sure enough, he bundles up and he goes out to his car, and he does have to be very careful as he travels to avoid the limbs and things that have fallen across the road. But sure enough, he was able to see the hospital lights and the beam of his lights through the gathering fog, because it was now close to midnight. And he bundles up his coat to guard against the winds that was very, very strong, and he takes his tattered old Bible and puts it in his overcoat pocket, and he goes inside to the hospital. The nurse said, "We're so glad that you're here, but he is fading fast." And he says, "Well, what is the man's name?" And she says, "You don't really know too much about him. We call him Tom. And Tom has been in here many times because Tom is on the floor. And we have sent him side back, worked on him, sent him side back. We know he lives over the woods, but he don't talk as much. We don't know a great deal about him. But his liver has now failed him, so he's not going to be able to survive." So Reverend Father O'Malley went into the room and spoke to Tom and said, "Hey, I'm Father O'Reilly, and I just want you to know that I was passing this way, and I just wondered if we could talk a little bit before you go to sleep tonight. And the guy talked rather roughly. He says, don't give me that. He says, no one would just be passing by on a night like this at midnight. I've asked for you to come. I asked the nurse to get you over here so you can give me the last rites. His Father Morales says, okay, we're going to do that. I just thought it would be nice to get acquainted a little bit. And he says, no, just give me the last rites. And so the Father does. And he has the prayer, and he closes his book at the end of that. But he continues to sit in the room. And he says, you know, even though we finished that, it still would be nice for us to talk a little bit. And he says, tell me about yourself. And oh, by the way, is there anything that you would like to confess? He says, oh, no. He says, I'm not going to confess. I'm not going to get into anything like that at all. So they talk, and they talk about hunting, about what it is like to live in the woods. They talk about the weather that's going on and things like that. But every now and then, Father O'Reilly would say, Tom, are you sure that there's not something you want to confess? And finally he says, well, there was something that I did a long, long time ago, but I really don't want to talk about it. So they chatted some more. And again, he asked if there's anything that you would like to confess. And he says, well, maybe I could talk about it, because after all, no one's going to do anything to me now, you know. But I have lived with this thing all of my life. It has just been something that I think about every single day. And he says, you know, I worked as a switchman on the freight train tracks. And we had a stormy night, like tonight, and all of us other switchmen were in the switch house, and to pass the time away, we began to drink. And he says, I drank more than my fair share. So when it came time to throw the switch for the freight train that was approaching, I volunteered to go out and throw the switch. He said, I must have had way much more than I thought I had, because what I did, I threw the switch in the wrong direction. And when that train came, it went where it was not supposed to go. And it went to a crossing, and it hit a car. And in that car was a husband and a wife and 2 daughters. And he says, that just tore me up. I was responsible for their death, and I need God to forgive me. Well, Father O'Malley was quiet for a long time, and he remembered that accident. He knew all about it. He says, Tom, he says, if I can forgive you, God can forgive you. Because what you don't know is that in that car that was hit, it was my mother and my father and my 2 older sisters that were killed that night. I had decided to stay home and not make that trip with my family. So I forgive you, and God forgives you too. Forgiveness is one of those things that we have a hard time doing. And yet Jesus said it was the most important thing. In the prayer, in the Lord's Prayer, it says, forgive us our debts as we forgive others' debts. And it goes on after the Lord's Prayer, it says, you know, and if you do not forgive others, then God is not going to be able to forgive you. So there's something about life that blocks us and stops us from living in utopia, and that is probably because we're still dwelling on something that either we did or somebody else did to us years and years ago. And it's like a tape, it's like a cassette tape, or maybe it's like a video movie that just comes up every now and then and we replay it. And maybe especially during holidays, you know. There's something about holidays sometimes, and we can get a little depressed. And we think about the past, and we think about those folks who have harmed us and done horrible things to us. And I know some of your stories, and I know that there have been some just atrocious things that have occurred in your life. But I also know that the best gift you can give yourself for this new year is the gift of forgiveness. See, it doesn't matter about the other person. It's the unforgiveness that is blocking us. It's a stumbling block to us to be fully alive, to be consciously in the presence of God, and to be in a state of peace, and to be in a state of love. Now, this farmer needed to hire some help on his farm, And there were three strong young men that came to interview for the job, and he asked all three of them the same question. He said, if you had a stone in your shoe, how long do you think you would be able to work? Well, the first young man said, well, I can work half a day at least with a stone in my shoe. The second young boy says, well, I could work all day long. The third boy said, well, I couldn't even work 1 minute if I had a stone in my shoe. I would take it off and get rid of it. So he hired the third young boy. Now, many of us are walking around with a stone in our shoe. We got a burr under our belt or something. We've got something that is still hurting us, and yet we refuse to get rid of it when we have the opportunity to get rid of it. Every single day, God gives us an opportunity to move to forgiveness, to be able to get past that obstacle so that we can experience true joy and true peace. That's what it's all about. Jesus said that actually there is no way that you can love and trust God if you don't always love and trust your fellow human being. And we've been in situations where people have been untrustworthy. They've lied to us. They've stolen from us. They've cheated on us. Whatever might have happened. But what we need to understand is that when we release them through forgiveness and extend love to them, that empowers us to be able to move past the obstacles that are blocking us and move us in the direction of living a life of which Jesus spoke. I've come that your joy might be full. That's what he said. Jesus came that we can learn to live out of a higher essence in our lives, our true essence, the essence of love and light.